Listen.
Posłuchaj.
Écoute.
Hör mal. 聞いてください。
Escucha. MCO.
Listen.
MCO.
MCO.
Between the Bars.
Hi, I'm Yannick Dondelanger, and this is Between the Bars, the podcast of the Mahler Chamber Orchestra. Welcome to Heimat, about a place where you belong. It's an episode exploring MCO's latest outreach and education project, in search of the meaning of home, the meaning of belonging, the meaning of Heimat.
Was ist für dich Heimat? Ist das ein Ort, ist das ein Land, ist das Familie? Was drückt Heimat aus?
Meine Heimat ist Syrien und da war halt Krieg und da sind viele Häuser zerstört worden. Und seine Familie war da, Vater, Mama. Und dann gab es aber eine Explosion und ich musste fliehen nach Deutschland. Es war halt ein Durcheinander.
The opening chords of Bartok's Romanian folk dances, one of our Heimat pieces you're going to hear a lot of throughout the episode. Enjoy it whenever it pops up. And you also heard an interview, behind stage at the Elbphilharmonie in Hamburg. An interview of a hearing-impaired boy describing through a sign language interpreter his Heimat. It's Syria during war. He says lots of things were destroyed, his family was there were many explosions, and they had to flee to Germany.
Hello Yannick, I hope you're doing fine. As promised, here is a little voice message with some background info to the whole Heimat concept and how we came up with the whole topic and everything.
And that was Valentina Georgilopoulos, MCO's outreach and education manager, leaving some tasty nuggets of information on voicemail before I sat down to chat with her about the whole Heimat project, what it is, how it came to be, and what it did for a particular group of students, and a very particular group of musicians, the MCO. It struck me while making this episode, and I think you're going to hear it in the interview, that Valentina has been such a strong force of nature behind MCO's Heimat project that little introduction could be necessary. I asked her about her roots and her influences growing up.
I think it's three things that always were very important when I grew up and still are now. It's nature. Nature always was a big part when I grew up. I grew up in Salzburg and we spent a lot of times in the countryside with my parents and my brothers. But also when we were in Greece visiting the family there, we spent a lot of time in the mountains or at the seaside. So yeah, nature definitely. And second thing is music. Music was very big. My grandmother really is into classical music. I remember her playing the piano and me sitting next to her on this little stool and just looking at her fingers with the red nail polish flying all around the piano. That was amazing. I played the piano, I went to dance classes, and I sang in the local choir. And in our basement, I did little musical shows where I invited the whole neighborhood. And I'm kind of glad no video material exists of that.
Maybe there's some audio material, you don't know.
No, I really don't think so. So music was definitely big. And the third thing is food. We are all big foodies and always have been.
Music and food.
Yeah.
Always goes together.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? When I feel sentimental, because I haven't been in Austria for quite a while, I really miss Knödel.
I love Knödel, yeah.
I think these are three elements that have been close to my heart when growing up and still play a big role in my life today.
So being in nature, playing music, and being a foodie have always been important to Valentina. They give her comfort, excitement, a sense of belonging. But as all parents and behavioural scientists know, with nurture comes also nature, where you're from, your blood roots.
I always felt very European. Maybe that sounds like a cliche, but I never felt Austrian, I never felt Greek, and I never felt German. There was always something too big from this other part to, for example, we've always been too German to be Greek. So the Greek family or the Greek friends, they always call us the Germans because we are like too much on time or too precise with some things. And in Germany, I'm always the Austrian one because I talk in this funny Austrian accent.
But in Austria, you're not the Austrian one, right?
No, I'm German in Austria. Yeah, because my Austrian is too German to be Austrian. Yeah, I'm definitely German there. And therefore, for me, was always very clear I'm European.
I'm in a similar situation with parents from two different countries, brought up in a third country, and also not feeling any roots other than strong European roots. You never feel envious of people you know who have very, very strong roots to one country going back generations? Because they have a sense, I often find they have such a sense of innate confidence in themselves.
They have. And sometimes I admire that.
Yes.
I think it's so fascinating. Like for me, I could never, if you ask me, where's home? I could not really answer that with a place. It's a lot of things that make home for me. And these people you just describe, you ask them and they say, Böham, next to Bischofshofen in a district of Salzburg or whatsoever.
If roots are where you're born, maybe also where your family blood is from, and key influences are the nurturing elements that you grow up with, then where does that leave your feelings of home? Or to put it another way, your sense of belonging? If, like more and more humans around the globe, your grounding and your identity is being split between multiple countries and cultures, sometimes unrelated, and in some cases, as in war, famine and persecution, not even by choice, where do you then find your core? Where is your centre? That's the obvious yet remarkable question Valentina and a working group of musicians from the Mahler Chamber Orchestra decided to explore, way back during the COVID lockdowns when they brainstormed a brand new school concert concept for the MCO, Heimat.
And from the very first moment, it was clear to us that we want to have a central topic, a topic that is the center of this whole concert. And then we use music as a vehicle to address this topic. Because we thought it's tricky enough to reach teenagers with a classical music concert. And
You decided your age group.
yeah, we decided the age group before, and we thought there's so many amazingly beautiful concepts out there for young kids, but teenagers, there is not so much out there. So we first focused on the teenagers, or we chose the age group. And then we said, okay, there has to be a topic. And with this little working group, we talked about 3 different topics that are of big importance for the MCO and also had importance in today's society. And then we all started to talk to teenagers that we know in all kinds of countries. And we asked them, which of the topics do you relate to most? Or what would you be interested to learn about more, to think about yourself? And it turned out that Heimat was the clear winner.
Right.
And then we said like, hey, cool, we have something to say about that. Every single person has something to say about that.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Was bedeutet Heimat für dich? Ist das ein Ort oder ist das ein Land? Ist das eine Stadt? Was macht das für dich aus?
بالنسبة لك أنت مش بس الحفلة، بالنسبة لك أنت وطن يعني إيه بغض النظر عن الحفلة؟
بالنسبة لي إيه؟
One of the Heimat project students after the school's concert. At first he couldn't really describe what Heimat meant to him, but then went on to say this.
أثرت فيه إنه حزن شوي وهيك.
The music was really nice. I experienced feelings of sadness. In my home, we have war. For me, they were feelings of sadness.
بالنسبة لي حزن.
So what about this word Heimat? It's a German word. It has a history, and it's complicated.
About the word Heimat, it's actually really interesting. I think it goes back to the 15th century. This is when it first was on the page. And Heim has the Germanic meaning of house or village. And until the 19th century, it was used in a law context. So it has nothing to do with politics or with emotions. It's really like describing the place that you owe or where you have like a legal connection with, something like that. And then in the 19th century, ideological context starts to be built around it and emotions come in. And then during the Third Reich, it started to be used for propaganda reasons.
Right. So before the Second World War.
Yeah, exactly.
When Nazi Germany was.
Exactly. It was really a big part of the whole propaganda. This was how you wanted the place to look like. This is what you wanted the people to refer to. This kind of culture actually was, I think, yeah, that's it. It described a whole culture. And then it kind of disappeared. Okay. It was not used in our language anymore. And
okay, after the Second World War.
Yeah, it was very, very closely connected. And I think a lot of people, when they heard it, they got like goosebumps because it was so strongly connected.
Mm-hmm.
I want to correct something I said before. It was not directly after Second World War that people started to avoid this word, because then after Second World War, there was the whole Heimat movie era, and this was pure kitsch.
Yeah.
And to be very honest, when I want to be comfortable,
you watch
when
a
I have
movie?
a bit of a hangover,
Really?
when it's raining outside and it's a Sunday afternoon.
It's about nostalgia.
Yeah, it is. I mean, everything was destroyed. Yeah. I mean, half of the families were dead. The cities were destroyed. People were hungry and poor. And I think there was a lot of nostalgia.
When Valentina and her working group went in front of the members of the Mahler Chamber Orchestra to pitch the Heimat concept, there was quite a sceptical reaction. Understandably. Wasn't she on thin ice? The word Heimat has a checkered history and is at best loaded. Even though Valentina was convinced, how did she win everyone else over?
The term Heimat, like the whole meaning of Heimat, the whole meaning of finding a place where you belong, is a topic that is so big in society. And just because this term was used in this certain time, it doesn't mean that the whole topic doesn't have relevance. It's exactly the opposite. It's so relevant nowadays. And with so many people having to leave the places where they grew up and building a new home somewhere else, with so many changes in society, we were convinced that this topic is big. We were convinced that also the generation of young people out there are really interested in talking about identity. I mean, Heimat and identity is something that is very, very strongly connected. And yeah, we said the word was there before it was used in this very, very bad context, and it still is there. And for the new generation, for the next generation, it doesn't have this bad taste or that stigma anymore.
So Valentina had the skeleton of a project. She had a topic, Heimat. She had the musicians of the MCO. She had teenagers as the captive audience. And of course, classical music as the language of communication. But the Mahler Chamber Orchestra is an ensemble of travellers, of musicians from around the world, from different backgrounds, different cultures. We're a mixed bunch. And Valentina wanted those united colours of MCO reflected in the teenagers.
Also für mich ist es eher ein Land, also mein Heimatland und die Familie, mit der Familie irgendwie zu sitzen in dem Heimatland, das ist für mich Heimat. Bei mir ist immer, wenn ich so rieche, wie meine Mutter Balkanessen kocht, dann ich mag dieses Geruch und dann fühle ich mich wie zu Hause.
From the beginning on, it was important to have a very mixed group of teenagers. We have students from a music high school who know quite a lot about music. We have students from nice private school, but we really wanted to have it as heterogene as possible. So there is also, it's called Willkommenklassen. It's a partnership with classes for kids who don't speak any German. So a lot of these kids have a refugee background. Right. They recently came to Germany and then they are in these classes until they reach a certain level of German. And then we also had kids, sorry, this is really hard for me to say it in English. Yeah, so Berufsschulen. It's not like high school.
Okay, just to help Valentina here a bit with tricky translations, Berufsschule in the English language are vocational schools, where you may go from the age of 14 and up to learn a practical trade. Thanks, Valentina.
So we had a really nice mixed group of people, almost 2,000 teenagers at the first.
2,000?
Yeah. 2,000 teenagers in this hall, which was kind of scary. But yeah, so it was important for us to have this mixed group, to have them understand how different the definition of Heimat and belonging can be for the same age group. To have them understand what it can mean to a person who's the same age but is coming from a complete different background, and to accept that there are so many different definitions out there. Yeah. I think this was one of our biggest thoughts.
So these very personal definitions of Heimat, home, belonging, they got me thinking of my fellow MCO members, who are the soul behind the truly international Mahler Chamber Orchestra. What do our Heimats look like? How many different senses of belonging do we all have? And are any of them connected? I asked Valentina these questions, and after a short pause, got a remarkably touching but also illuminating insight into the soul of a very special, unique orchestra.
Our musicians come from so many different countries, so many different places in the world, from so many different homes. And somehow everybody brings a little tiny piece of their home on tour. And then all these different protagonists kind of create their own home when on tour. And I think this can be all over the world. This can be in New York City, but this can also be in a small rural countryside village in Romania. It doesn't matter. It's as long as if this group is together with all the memories, with all the passion that drives this group of people together, yeah, as long as they are together, there's always a certain feeling of home around it. I mean, we are social creatures in the end, aren't we? I mean, if you're traveling so many days a year, so many years of your life, you need to surround yourself with something you feel comfort with, something you feel familiar with. You need to belong, for sure.
Yeah.
And it was also really interesting when we fixed the topic and we started talking to many of the members and we asked them about what's Heimat for you. This orchestra was an answer we heard so many times.
Really?
Yeah.
It's nice to know. I'm happy for that after all these years.
You can probably hear I got a warm feeling all over. You know, you work, you focus, you're dedicated to help build something like the Mahler Chamber Orchestra that will be different from the rest and reach way into the future. But then you forget to realise how amazing and touching and fragile the whole organisation is. Okay, coming back to Heimat. So we've got the teenagers, we have the orchestra, but what about the music? Isn't that what it's all about?
It was kind of hard to choose the music. We decided that we want to have 3 different pieces, and we soon developed the concept that every piece should somehow be Heimat music, but in its own meaning. The whole concert is moderated, so there is explanation going on stage. We try to explain to the teenagers why we picked this piece of music and why this piece of music is related to the topic of Heimat. The last piece we chose is very special to the membership, very special to the MCO.
I think I know the piece.
You know the piece? What's your guess?
Tell me what it is. My guess is it was Don Giovanni.
Oh, yeah. Tell us. Why does it feel like home?
It's where we were born. I think it's one of the first pieces we ever did, and we played it over 100 times. We lived with it for months on end in the first years of the orchestra's life. So it's like the first sounds a baby hears after it came out of the womb for an orchestra, simply put.
Exactly. The other two pieces we chose, the first one is from Bela Bartok, and it's the Transylvanian folk dances. Sorry, it's the Romanian folk dances. Bartok, after his first trip to Transylvania, where he went on a vacation and he heard this woman singing a song to a baby, and he really started to study the traditional music all over today's Balkan, into Turkey, into North Africa. And he was scared that this kind of music could get lost within time because there are no recordings. It's just transferred by singing. And that's why he started to travel all around these countries and he recorded and really tried to understand how a country could sound like. And he experienced something very beautiful. He realized that the certain characteristics of a sound doesn't end at the border. So music doesn't know borders. The second piece is the Chamber Symphony 110A by Shostakovich. And we chose this piece to be representative for how it feels when you don't feel safe at home, when home is a scary place, when home is a dangerous place, but you're somehow stuck there. Shostakovich wanted to show his criticism against the Stalin regime and had to be so careful in how to do it. You hear the bombs and then you hear like this almost hysteric high reactions to the bombs, and yeah, you hear how scary it is, and then it kind of gets surreal with these high sounds and the violins. And I think this piece is so strong, and it really transfers something very, very clearly. And I think this is why this piece is so suitable to reach teenagers. I mean, in pop music, we have this all the time, that your own story or the experiences you recently have are composed into a piece and then the singer sings about it. Like when Adele was getting divorced, she wrote a whole album about it. And I think a lot of teenagers, or also a lot of grown-ups, don't know that the personal history can also go into a piece in classical music. And this can be good feelings, but this can also be bad feelings. And I think this piece by Shostakovich is a very, very good example for how a personal story makes it into a piece of music, classical music.
Wie habt ihr euch angesprochen gefühlt von der Moderation jetzt bei dem Konzert? Konntet ihr da was mitfühlen?
Ja, ich konnte es auf jeden Fall nachvollziehen auch. Besonders weil mein Land ja auch genannt wurde und vorgestellt wurde. Deswegen konnte ich es echt gut nachvollziehen und ja, so.
Bei mir ist das Gleiche. Mein Land wurde ja am Anfang gezeigt und auch davon viel gespielt. Ich habe es so gespürt in mein Herzen. Ich habe sehr oft Gänsehaut bekommen. Es war sehr schön.
With an orchestra, schools, music examples and a topic, the Heimat Education Project was ready to make the leap from the theoretical world into the real world, to go into classes, and for those classes to then go into the concert hall and on stage for their very own Heimat concert. But hang on, the Mahler Chamber Orchestra is continually on the road and doesn't have time to touch base with school classes weeks before the concert. Valentina's answer was to send a big pack of preparation material to the teachers that they could go through with the classes. Now, I know what you're thinking. Yes, tedious sessions in class, describing the workings of a violin or the theory behind counterpoint, or even the daily routines of a bunch of white male composers who died hundreds of years ago. Well, of course, Valentina is cleverer than that.
So before we talk about music, before we talk about composers, the MC or anything, we introduce them to this whole topic of Heimat, of belonging, and we ask them a lot of questions about it. We ask them questions such as, is your Heimat a certain place or a memory? Does your Heimat have a certain taste? Or do you ever feel proud of your home country? Is your passport a privilege or a burden? We encourage them to be creative in their answers and send us their answers. So this can be audio recordings of their little statements. It can be written answers. It can be little poems. It can be pictures, videos, drawings, whatever works for them to address this topic. And when we did it the first time in the Elbphilharmonie, we only asked for audio recordings, and we expected maybe 60 audio recordings or something like that. We thought it might be a little bit too much work to deal with it in school classes, and yeah. And we received almost 2,000, which was incredible. I was sitting on my couch and I was listening to the recordings, I was reading through the statements, and I was in tears for hours because I was so touched by what I was reading. I was so touched that they are so open, sharing these deeply emotional feelings and deeply emotional definitions. And also I was so happy that it worked. I mean, we've been thinking about this concept and planning for months, but you never have guarantee that it works. And you try to convince everybody around you, and then you go home and like, oh, hopefully it will work. Because you just don't have guarantee. And then you're sitting there and you receive all these statements.
What were they talking about? What kind of things were they saying?
Well, some of them referred to the loss of their Heimat and how much they miss someone who is not alive anymore or who was not able to escape with them. Others referred to the divorce of their parents and not being able to live with both parents anymore and therefore losing kind of home. Others referred to the loss of a beloved animal, beloved pet that, I mean, everybody who has or had a dog knows this feeling.
Know that.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, sometimes it was just talking about the walk they like to take with their mom together on foggy afternoons. And it was just this little picture into so many different lives that was opened this afternoon on my couch. And I was so thankful for that.
You've told us a bit about why the three pieces were chosen, Shostakovich, Mozart, Bartók. And you've told us a bit about the background of those composers. What was important for you when you were writing the teaching material, how it should be?
It was very important to me that every teacher could use it. So you don't have to be a music teacher to be able to use this material. You can be the religion or ethics teacher and you think it's interesting to go to a concert with your class, and then you can use this material and it prepares you to prepare your students. So when Shostakovich was composing this piece, what was going on in Russia, what was going on in Europe, what was the general art spectrum doing in this period. And same with Bela Bartok. With Bela Bartok, for example, it's also very interesting to focus on the terms of nationalism. And how this came up during this period of time, how it got big and how later on it totally escalated, but also to focus on why it came up, why Hungarian, Romanian, Transylvanian music got big in the first place. So we tried to put all the information in context, because if we remember correctly, these are the things you remember the easiest when learning something new in school.
What were your minimum hopes for what a student in the class would get from studying, and I'm presuming also listening to these pieces in class?
To be very honest, my minimum hope was that they are not bored.
Okay, sounds normal for high school years.
Yeah, but really, think about your high school
Yeah. Well, I love. Well, no, I'm not going to say that.
No, what I was hoping was that they start to connect different elements of history, different element of different art sectors, that they kind of start to build connections themselves. I was hoping that this might be the case after they went through the teaching material. And also I was hoping they would have fruitful discussions about the topic they've just learned. This is something I was kind of missing in high school. We learned about something, and then we never had the room to discuss it and build up our own opinion about it or reflect it. And I was really hoping they could do this with the teaching material.
Finally, we get to the day of the concert. After all the preparation, the concept, the teaching materials, the discussions in class, the Heimat statements prepared by the students and MCO members, the orchestra has rehearsed, and Shostakovich, Mozart and Bartók are ready to be performed. The format of the concert puts the students squarely center stage for nearly 10 minutes before any music is heard. Under dimmed lighting, an audio collage of the students' statements fills what is hopefully a quiet but focused concert hall.
Heimat verbinde ich mit Menschen, die ich liebe, wie Familie und beste Freunde.
Meine Heimat verbinde ich mit den Gerüchen aus meiner Kindheit.
Heimat ist für mich Sicherheit.
Heimat bedeutet für mich tanzen. Tanzen macht mich glücklich.
It was very important to us to start it with their voices and their understanding of this whole topic. Statements that show how different this definition and understanding of Heimat can be. And this was like grooving all of us into the whole topic.
Heimat riecht nach Dönerbude und S-Bahn.
What do you remember the feeling was in the hall? How did you judge the atmosphere?
There was so much energy. I remember before I was getting on stage, the door opened for a moment and I heard such a crazy sound. I've never heard a sound like that before, because usually when we are backstage, the audience is kind of quiet, but there was, I mean, imagine 2,000 teenagers.
Rather not.
There were like Papierflieger, like paper
airplanes everywhere.
Yeah, paper airplanes out of the program, and it was so loud. And in the first moment, I didn't understand this was the sound coming from the audience. And I asked my colleague, "What's that kind of sound?" And she said, "That's the kids in there." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, what did you do to yourself?"
With a very terrified orchestra, they're waiting to go on.
No, but I have to say, it was amazing to be lining up there with the orchestra, and everybody in the orchestra was so excited to play this concert.
And how did it change
It got completely quiet.
Right.
Completely quiet.
Focus.
There was so much focus. They were so focused and so quiet, and we were on stage and they were like the audio statements played, and still they were completely quiet. And then also during the moderation, they were so concentrated. And I remember, I think it was the first movement of the Shostakovich, very, very quiet part. I was sitting on the side. I was listening to the piece and it was so calm and quiet. And I was like, oof, what a risky move to play such a quiet part in this big hall. And in this moment, a fun person did a sound like, and I was like,
oh no, that's
oh, whoa, now they will start giggling and everything. But nothing.
Been there, done that. Oh, right.
Nothing. There was no reaction at all. I was so proud.
Wow.
I was so proud of the whole audience. I was so proud
That's
of this
amazing.
orchestra. I was so happy. There was so much energy on stage and in the audience, and there was so much concentration, and you could really see they were having a good time. They liked it a lot, and it was a huge honor to be standing on stage with the orchestra.
That's one very proud outreach and education manager, Valentina Katerina Georgilopoulos. She's a lovely person, a great host, and has taken us on a journey to finding that place that is home, whatever it may be. The effort, detail, and brainstorming, not to mention money, it takes to bring a project like Heimat to fruition is remarkable. Not least because although the power of music to help you find your Heimat appears, to the members of MCO anyway, to be in plain sight, right in front of your eyes or ears, it is apparently hidden, not obvious at all in our society. Until we start to talk to each other, to listen to each other's stories, to get in the Heimat groove, as Valentina would say. For the outro of this episode, I want to give you Valentina's last thoughts on the Heimat project.
I think it's so crucial in today's society to give people room to speak, to give people room to talk, because I think you can only, maybe not even understand, but accept what the other person is about if you heard a bit of their story. And I think this is something our school system and also politics don't give enough room for. Yeah, this would be my advice.
The Heimat Project is coming this April 2024 to Berlin, and this time bigger. A full festival offering multidisciplinary activities with music, concerts, and of course the MCO. Thanks must go first to all the students whose voices and statements featured in this episode, and also the musicians of the Mahler Chamber Orchestra, led by concertmaster Matthew Truscott, performing clips from Bartók's Hungarian Dances, Shostakovich Chamber Symphony, and the overture to Mozart's opera Don Giovanni. MCO is very grateful for the generous support for Heimat from the German Federal Government Commissioner for Culture and Music, and also to the Elbe Philharmonie for their curiosity and trust. And lastly, thanks and congratulations to Valentina Georgilopoulos, whose brainchild is Heimat, finding a place where you belong. The Between the Bars team is Matthias Mayer, Laura Thompson, and me, Yannick Dondelanger, and is a Mahler Chamber Orchestra production. Don't forget, keep listening.
Between the Bars.